All right. Welcome, everyone, to our first CSM Mastermind event of 2024, and Happy New Year. I'm Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our success coaching training program. We're back for our monthly live webcast today discussing the consultative approach. This learning opportunity is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training. We're closing in on 29,000 students from nearly 100 different countries. And our skills development platform is really making an impact across the globe. Our programs offer a range of formats to suit your preferences, from flexible self-paced online learning to interactive virtual instructor-led boot camps. We've got some great boot camps scheduled in Q1, including our very popular CCSM Level 1 and Level 2, a variety of workshops, including strategic customer conversations with Bob London, difficult customer conversations with Anita Toth, change management for customer success with Toby Lusich, management essentials with Patrick James, and our popular 12-week coaching programs delivered in partnership with the University of San Francisco with yours truly. Whether you prefer self-paced learning, an instructor-led boot camp, an interactive workshop, or a personalized weekly coaching program, our wide range of customer-focused programs and formats are tailored to meet the unique needs and learning preferences of everyone. If you're eager to level up your customer-facing skills, we've got the perfect program for you. So don't miss out on these amazing learning opportunities that can truly transform your professional journey. Register now and take your skills to the next level. Ashley has dropped a link to our program page and any coupons that we're offering right now in chat. You can also find out more about all of our online learning and instructor-led programs and workshops at successcoaching.co. Now, this CSM Mastermind series, I think now we're starting our 5th year, is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. No matter where you work, what your role is, or who your customers are, we've got you covered. We handpick practical and useful topics designed just for people in customer-facing roles. You can also check out our upcoming event schedule at successcoaching.co. It's under the events tab. Our next mastermind session will be on February 14th, Valentine's Day, when we'll be talking about developing customer success plans. And that is definitely something that you want to do if you truly love your customers. So click on the events tab at the top of the successcoaching.co page to find out more and to register. A few housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar is being recorded, and we will be sharing the replay and our transcription on our website early next week. During the webinar, we welcome your questions. We want your questions. This is one of the things that we love about it. We love the engagement of the people who are watching us. So please don't hesitate to use the Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to ask a question or upvote an existing one. We will prioritize questions based on the number of upvotes, and we never have enough time to get through all the questions. So if you see something in there and you really want to hear an answer to it, make sure you use that upvote button. We're also live streaming on LinkedIn Live and have somebody monitoring that feed. So if you're on LinkedIn and you have a question, please post it and it will be relayed to us. Thank you, Tracy. While we appreciate feedback during the event, we kindly request that you use the chat window for any sort of commentary. So questions, Q&A, commentary, chat. Now, there's a bunch of thought leadership out there along with loads of theories on how to deliver customer success. But in this series, we're going to focus on practical, real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those who are actually doing customer success day in and day out. And to make that happen, we've invited 3 amazing panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are folks who are really damn good at what they do, and we're going to ask them to spill the beans on their experiences and their perspectives. So without further ado, I want our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all and share a little bit about who they are and what they do, and maybe, because it's the beginning of the year, drop something in about your plans for the new year. So let's get started as usual in alphabetical order with Amy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew. My name's Amy Wheldon, and I've been in customer success for the last 12 years, first in operations, and in the last 10 years, I've been the head of customer success, both at an ed tech and a fintech company. I'm native to the Bay Area. I grew up in Santa Cruz, which is a beach town known for surfing, skateboarding, and the boardwalk. I'm a master gardener, certified both by Oregon and Ohio State. And I'm really passionate about CS. I love Success Hacker because of the learning and development aspects of it. Like I said, I spent the last 5 years working in ed tech. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and when I'm not CSing, I love to bake. Cinnamon rolls and sourdough are my specialty. I love to hike. If you ever get a chance to go to Silver Falls, there's 11 waterfalls on a 7-mile loop. That's my favorite place to hike. And I love to garden. So I have a mini farm with my family, and I pick a word of the year every year to help define where I want to go. And my word for 2024, ironically, is growth. So I'm really focusing both on personal and professional growth. And then in my garden, I'm excited. We're going to grow elephant garlic this year, which if you've never heard of it, it's delicious and it's much easier to work with. We've got some new fruit trees to plant too, in addition to our regular garden. For my growth, I put a gym in my garage because I want to get in better shape. Like the pandemic showed that it's really easy to stay home and not get out as much. So to motivate myself, I put a gym in my garage, and then doing as much professional development as I can during this winter season. Today we're snowed in, so which is rare for the Pacific Northwest, but we're iced over. So after this ends, I'll be doing a little bit of reading and finishing up a certification.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. I can understand why you like Portland, having grown up in Santa Cruz.
Yes.
I spent a lot of time down there. An ex-girlfriend of mine lived in Scotts Valley, and there's not much going on in Scotts Valley. So we spent most of our time down in Santa Cruz, and I love Santa Cruz, hanging out on the boardwalk, downtown. The Catalyst, saw some great. I saw Willie Nelson at the Catalyst. I saw Everclear at the
BB
Catalyst.
King. Highlight BB King.
Yeah. No, that's that. You saw BB King at the Catalyst. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw him at the Mountain Winery. But yeah, I love Santa Cruz. But yeah, elephant garlic, is that really big garlic, or is there some? Yeah, that's it. That's awesome. I love cooking as well, so I'm gonna have to check out the elephant garlic, or you can send me some. Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Celia, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Celia Gouveia. I've been building and leading customer success teams for 15 years, primarily in the SaaS business to business world at companies like SuccessFactors, acquired by SAP, Glint, acquired by LinkedIn, and most recently at Smart Recruiters, primarily with HR tech and working with CHROs and people teams. I've been responsible for building and scaling the entire post-sale functions, from implementation to CSM, account management and renewals, through support and operations, which I think all play a key part in today's discussion. I am currently located right outside of Tampa, Florida, in a small community called Wesley Chapel. I would be curious if anyone out there has heard of it. But I was in the Bay Area, and prior to that in Ireland for a short stint, and originally from Boston. On a personal level, I am a mom of 2 very independent girls who are 3 and 6, and keep me busy. And my focus on the new year is really on areas that bring me joy. So focusing on spending more time from a personal level with my family and giving back to the community, as well as on a professional level in networking, going to more virtual and live events, and really getting more involved in the communities around me. Excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Celia. So I didn't realize you were originally from Boston. I have a lot of family are from around there. My father was born in Malden. So
oh, wow.
My best friends lives in Amesbury. Although he's done with the East Coast, so he's moving out here. He's moving out here this year.
Yes.
Yeah. He's tired
I see some
of it.
from Mass on here as well, and hope people are surviving any of the storms and cold weather.
Yeah. It's the kid's done. The kid's out of the house, so he's like, all right, let's get the heck out of here, because he's tired of shoveling snow out of his driveway, which he's been doing for 25 years. Awesome. Last but not certainly not least, Wade.
Thank you, Andrew. Don't get me started on the snow. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all the participants for joining us today. It's a topic that I think when I look at all of the disciplines that are part of our craft, really truly becoming a partner and consulting with our customers is probably the discipline that's my favorite. I'm based in the tri-state area. I spent 15 years in New York City with my wife, but we relocated a couple of years ago to a very small town in Northwest Connecticut, a little town called Sherman. Currently, I work as a team lead at Salesforce. So I'm in a bit of a player coach role, helping our teams to deliver outcomes for customers in the financial services vertical. I've spent a lot of my career in professional services, and have only been in a proper CS role for the past 6 years or so. When I look back, like customer success has been front and center my entire career. The customers are a little bit different, but that principle of helping stakeholders deliver on outcomes is definitely has been a constant. And when I'm not working, I like to spend a lot of time outside. If you ask my wife, I play too much golf. If you ask me, I probably don't play enough golf. Love to do a lot of hiking, and I'm a bit of a crossword maven as well. And looking to the new year professionally, right now our teams are heavy in success planning mode with our customers. So getting with them and setting that 2024 strategic vision. And one of the personal challenges for me for 2024 is I'd like to be able to do 50 push-ups in a row without stopping. So I'm 2 weeks into that journey. I'm at 14 right now.
Awesome.
Ways to go.
For you. Good for you. Sherman, Connecticut. Now I remember why that name sounds so familiar. So Sherman is that's actually a family name on my father's side of the family.
Okay.
So cool. We have a bunch of Shermans, and a bunch of them from Connecticut. So interesting. When you mentioned that on the call, I was like, how do I know that name? Why does that city sound familiar? Well, that's why. Awesome. Once again, we all appreciate your time today. Now let's get to the topic at hand. Today, we're going to dive into a critical question. How can we become masters of a consultative approach to truly understand and address every customer's unique needs? In this era of evolved customer success, this approach helps us surpass the typical boundaries of service. The consultative method shifts our role from mere service providers to trusted advisors. It means getting a deep grasp of the customer's business, challenges, and goals so we can offer customized solutions that drive their success. This approach goes beyond simply delivering solutions. It's about offering insights, guidance, and forming a partnership that helps us navigate the complex maze of customer challenges. It's like going on a journey together, aiming for higher engagement, retention, and loyalty. Our ultimate goal is not just to satisfy, but to elevate the customer experience. In the ever-evolving realm of customer success, where the line between service provider and trusted advisor is getting blurrier by the day, what do you think is the most important thing when it comes to nailing a consultative approach? I mean, truly understanding and addressing the unique needs of each customer.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here.
Jump in.
Great. So I think this starts from day one in the sales cycle. A salesperson first understands as much as they can about the company in order to match with the right service or product that we're offering. As soon as transitioned over to an implementation or customer success team, I like to set that first impression and expectation that we're going to be working together as partners, as an extension of your team, and go really deep in understanding their business, doing a deep discovery of what are the goals of them individually, not just the goals of using our product or offering, but the goals of them as a company. How are they measured? And what's happening in their company throughout the year? How can we map our offering to that so that we have a really tailored solution to their business? And if we understand a customer's business, we should be able to not only map what we're doing to it, but ask a lot of open questions to understand how can we jointly measure success? How can we come up with a mutual success plan? And how can we have an agreed upon cadence to check in on those success metrics that we've both deemed are important, not only to us as a business, but important to our company as well. And I like to set that up in the beginning and carry that on through the relationship with that really open-ended dynamic of questions.
I love that. I just want to add on to that. I think that curiosity is the one thing that will really help you when you're understanding your customer's business needs. if you're working off like a value realization framework and you're really trying to dig deep into your customers' goals and objectives so that you can better understand their business, you should always be thinking like, how do I get my point of contact promoted? What truly matters to them? And curiosity is a not to it's an underrated skill, I think. Curious about their business, about what it is that they're trying to achieve this year, what really and then how do the goals of implementing the software tie up with the overall business goals that will then justify the spend that they're making in the software that they purchased from you.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you just said. You're going to hear me throughout this talk about outcomes a lot. Executives buy outcomes. They don't buy features. They don't buy widgets. And I think in our craft, it's really easy to get lost doing the little things that need doing over the course of a long relationship with a customer. And we're going to talk about this more and dig in, but it's really like, how do you understand the why behind the thing that was asked? And really anchor to the outcomes you're after. So yeah, I think we're all in agreement there.
Yeah. So 100%. Celia, I disagree with you on one point though. Right. I don't believe it begins day one of the sales cycle. I believe it begins as soon as you pop on their radar. Right. So they're creating their own kind of vision of what this product, whatever you have to offer is going to do for them. But I also like how you all kind of chimed in on the WIFM. What's in it for me? The WIFM for each individual, and it goes beyond. You also, I think it was you, Celia, where you called out not just the key stakeholder, but those individual users. Right? We need to understand not just the WIFMs of the people who are responsible, those stakeholders, but we need to go all the way down to this person who's going to be using it on a daily basis, right? Because the higher level stakeholders are going to be interested in something that is likely tied to some sort of corporate objective, right? But the people that are down in the trenches they just want to leave the office on time every day so they can go watch their kid play soccer. Right. And understanding and uncovering all those things. And Wade, you mentioned the five, you mentioned the whys, right? And I love the 5 whys. It's something we teach over and over again, right? Being inquisitive and Amy, the curiosity, right? It's curiosity, it's open-ended questioning, it's discovering the WIFMs, understanding what they care about. Really what it boils down to. So let's continue down that theme, right? Well, we started talking about some of the key skills that customer success managers need to effectively adopt and excel in a consultative approach. What else? I mean, we talked about curiosity. It's really less of a skill and more of a mindset, but open-ended questioning. That's another key skill. What else?
Open-ended questions are so powerful. Yes. I train my teams to have a question bank so that they actually can pull from that if they are struggling with open-ended questions. And it helps you get in that habit of pitching something out there and then, of course, then be quiet, listen, or, then pull on the thread. So what is it that people are saying that help you? People will give you cues to let you know either they don't want to talk about something or they do. The whole goal of an open-ended question is to just get them giving you all of the information. So I think that never underestimate the power of open-ended questions. And then I think another incredibly important CSM skill set is time management. You have to prioritize your time so that you can have time to have those open-ended question conversations. Book yourself buffer time on your calls with your customers so that if it does run over, you're not cutting them off right when they're in the middle of telling you a story that is going to unlock something that you could really benefit from knowing about their business. So you got to be efficient with your time and other tasks. Oh, sorry, my dog.
That's okay.
And then that allows you the time that you really need to get into those open-ended questions.
I love the fact that you have your team has a question bank, right? That actually was one of the more popular standalone workshops that we did last year, was this discovery question inventory. Let's come up with a list. Let's come up with a set of questions based off of the desired outcomes that you're trying to achieve. But kind of so love that. But taking off from the time management piece, not only I think is it important that you're allocating and you're prioritizing the time that you have to be with your customer, but I think it's also important that you're prioritizing the questions as well, because you're never going to be able to get all the questions answered that you want to get answered.
That's such a great point. I think I'd add a couple things. Anytime I enter into a conversation with any stakeholder of any level, I think being prepared is really important, right? Like, information has never been more democratized, and knowing your customer's customer, there's no reason to not walk into a conversation without some foundational knowledge on sort of what it is they're after. Also setting context, right? Like, why are you here? What are your goals for this conversation? What's your customer here for? What do they want to get out of this conversation, right? Establishing that at the onset is really important. And then I think another thing we lose ourselves in is, like, we're human beings, right? Building a connection is, I think, one of the most important things that you can do. Spend some time, talk about your personal life, learn your customer, learn who they are as a human. I think when I reflect back on my career, the most successful relationships I've built with customers, they're no longer my customers. They're my friends. I play golf every year with a fella in, down outside of Philadelphia, because we work together on a project in a vendor customer capacity, and our relationship grew from that, right? If we're doing this right, we're going to laugh, we're going to cry, we're going to argue. And if you can do that from a position of, human connection, you're in the green. So that's, like, I anchor to that pretty heavily when I'm coaching my teams and when I'm working with customers. It served me well over the years.
Well, it's huge. I mean, to be consultative, we have to establish a relationship. Celia, there's one, we've kind of danced around the skill, but there's one skill, and we've mentioned different aspects of it, but there's still one skill I haven't heard come out that I think is brutally important, and it's I've each of you have touched on it though. So what skill do you think that I'm thinking about now?
What was coming to my mind was empathy. So listening, understanding, and empathy. And that helps in not only building the relationship, but helping to prove that you're a trusted advisor for that consultative relationship. So that's the one that comes to mind, but I'd be curious what you were thinking.
Well, so the one question, and these are all components. I love the empathy as well. Active listening, right? And that is such an important skill. And it's with active listening that we use empathy. We ask open-ended questions. Wade, you talked about establishing a relationship. It's through that process of active listening where we ask the open-ended question, we get a response, we restate that response in our own words. That's incredibly powerful. So what I heard you say was X, Y, and Z, not parroting what the customer said. That's key. It's actually saying it back to the customer in a different way with the same meaning. Because what that does, it does two things, right? Two really important things that helps build that relationship. And for those of you who have heard me, who are regulars, how much I love the Never Split the Difference book, right? And how much I talk about Never Split the Difference. I think it's one of the best business books out there for people in our roles. You begin to establish a relationship with somebody when they, number one, feel like you're listening to them, right? And number two, they're more willing to share with you more, right? And by restating what you heard in your own words, tells them, hey, this person really is listening to me, gives them an opportunity to correct you, but also will encourage them to share, continue to share with you. And then in some cases, share even more with you. Those were, as the book, as The book cites those black swans, those things that you didn't know, which you never would have gotten out of somebody unless you had that connection. But I think we touched on all the key skills. So now that we've got kind of that list of key skills, how can customer success professionals better understand their clients' businesses to provide more valuable consultations? How crucial is this understanding for the overall success of the consultative approach? So I'm thinking, what kind of prep? What do you need to be prepared for? Not just a list of questions. Question bank is great, but you need to go in understanding something about the customer.
I'm happy to start here.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. It was mentioned earlier about prep, but doing the initial research. So going to the customer's website, understanding more about their industry, their competitors, checking out the contacts on LinkedIn and doing your own stakeholder mapping. Who do they report into? Who's their boss? Who's on their team? So understanding as much as you can that's out there in the public domain before asking the customer for that. Then when you show up to a call, you sound like you have done your research, and that shows that you care enough about their business, and you can start to ask deeper questions. You can start to ask about their priorities for the year. You can start to ask how they're going to measure those, and you can really go deeper once you have that baseline foundation and have done that initial prep on a customer.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that much like you, Andrew, I think that though the customer experience goes all the way back to their first interaction. And I think that part of your research should include like listening to all of the gong calls that they did with your sales team, understanding what was their initial pain, why were they purchasing from you, who were the stakeholders that were involved in the purchase, in addition to all of the things that Celia mentioned, which is, what are they trying to achieve and what do you know about their business? You can add on, knowing about their industry, understanding how they plan on using your product and how that applies to their industry, and then what are their actual strategy of why they made this investment, and what kind of priority is it to them, what's their decision-making process. All of that details are usually gathered in the sales cycle. So the ways that you can capture that, and we know Salesforce, is built differently by every company. HubSpot the same. You may not necessarily get everything you need, but doing your research, much to Celia's point, is the way that you can get on a call with your customers and confirm what you know about their business, rather than making them tell you their story as the second or third person or fifth person that they've talked to in your org.
Yeah, I don't think I have a ton to add there. I think like one of the things I use the frame POV, and I think it's so important to have a strong point of view when talking to your customers. And how do you build that POV, right? There's tons of public data. If you're a publicly traded company, you're issuing 10Ks, there's an abundance of information there. One of the many sort of responsibilities of a customer success professional is to sort of manage internal stakeholders. And I think we oftentimes overlook using those resources to help us inform that POV. So I'm always saying, talk to your sellers, talk to your product people. Don't be afraid to ask these questions to help build that strong POV. To like what Celia said, you want to show up ready for the conversation. It's okay to not know everything. A lot of these businesses are made up of tens or hundreds of smaller businesses, right? Financial services happens to be one where every global bank actually has hundreds of businesses, and you're not going to know all of them. But if you're going to talk to someone who's in wealth management, there's probably someone in your organization who has that type of experience. Don't underserve yourself by not taking advantage of those people that that are lining up with you.
And once again, this should go without saying, but we're talking about white glove, high touch.
Totally.
Right? The reality of the situation. You're not do this for every customer. But those are typically your largest customers. Those are your biggest average contract values, your biggest ARR customers, and typically have the most upside. So guess what? You need to make the extra effort, and you need to be prepared. And while I think it's great for you to look in your CRM systems for what sales does, sales is notoriously bad at taking notes. Right, garbage in is garbage out. Don't expect that the last thing that you should be doing is checking it out like half hour before your first call with a customer. You need to do your homework. You need to do your due diligence. You need to get your POV, your point of view, on the customer. And as I think Amy mentioned, the worst thing you could do is be asking the same questions that the customer's already answered. Right, so it's not about asking them the same questions. It's validating what you understand, asking them to help you understand where you're not clear on things or go deeper. And you know what? Customers like vendors that ask good questions. Right? They don't like vendors that ask the same questions over and over again, because then it looks like your organization isn't in sync. Yeah. And that's the worst time for that to happen too, right? We've gone from that transition from the sales process to the post-sales process, and you've gone from the people who made a bunch of promises to the people who now are responsible for making the promises in reality. And the people who are responsible for making the promise in reality are like, I don't know what's going on. That scares people, right? That is the biggest, probably one of the biggest causes of disengagement and churn, is missing that handoff. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think it's important, after, not only for the handoff to be done well, but I like to reiterate on the first call with the customer. So if sales isn't joining that initial kickoff call, it's a prime time to say, this is what we've heard so far. This is what we believe to be true. And for the customer to be able to weigh in, naturally extending to open-ended questions, but they know you've done your homework and that you've transitioned and are appearing as one team internally to them.
100%.
Absolutely.
I have seen huge companies completely botch that. Big companies, we're talking Fortune 10 that we've worked with, that have botched that handoff, and the customers stick around because they're the only game in town for what they offer. And I've seen tiny, small startups just nail that handoff and seem a lot bigger and more coordinated than the size of their company would lead you to believe.
Yeah, I also think even with a handoff that's not of the greatest quality, you can still show up prepared to that initial call. Yep. Rooted in what you know of a customer that's made publicly available, right?
Yeah.
Don't ever ask a customer what keeps you up at night, right? Like,
oh, Jesus.
I read on your
like
read on your report that you're seeking to increase revenue by X. Here's a little, here's how our capabilities can help you achieve that, right? So always root that questioning and what you know to be true.
I think you can't underestimate the power of like segmentation and playbooks here too. Because if you're trying to understand your customer's industry, take a look at everybody else that's in that same industry. If your company doesn't segment for you, same customer size, and take what you've already learned and then apply that. And if your company doesn't have playbooks, hopefully they do. But you can create your own playbooks too if you need something really tactical. Of this customer is in fintech or financial services, and so I know with my other 10 customers that were in financial services, this is kind of how we moved along. Yeah. And then don't be afraid to say, historically with our financial services customers, this is how we've used our product, and help guide them too, because they're looking to you to be the expert on the product and how to best use it. And so you can leverage that knowledge that you've learned from the other customers that you support.
Yeah, you can't show up and say, okay, what are your desired outcomes? Right? 9 times out of 10, they're going to look at you like a deer in headlights. What the hell does that mean? Right? You need to, or maybe they have a hard time quantifying them. Right? And they need to be quantified. Right? So you need to lead them down the path like a good consultant will do. I mean, that's the key, right? It's the consultative approach. I want to be a good consultant. I did consulting for years. I never told the customer this is what you should do. I led them to that point. And that's what you need to do. You need to lead them, and you lead them based off of, being empathetic, asking the right questions in the right ways, establishing a connection, doing your homework. I remember back in the day, when I was in on-prem software, wouldn't think twice about reading a 10K, a 10Q, an annual report, especially for our largest customers. That was standard operating procedure, right? I want to understand the company better. And when I started introducing that, especially to some of the folks that are earlier in their careers, they were like, "What's that? What does that mean?" I'm like, it means doing your research, right? If you're going to spend the effort and you spend the time and the effort to help this high touch customer, this white glove customer achieve what they're trying to achieve, it requires you to do your homework. So we touched on the industry specific knowledge. I think that's really important as well. You need to understand the industry. You don't have to be an expert. Your customer is the expert. You don't have to be an expert in their business, but you need to at least sound like you know what the hell you're talking about, right? But there's been a lot of talk. And by the way, if you have questions, please ask questions, because we're going to get to questions here in a moment. I see we've already got 5. And upvote anything that you see there. And by the way, we go, as a reminder, we go until 15 minutes past the hour. So we will answer questions as long as we're still here. So AI is big. It's on everybody's mind. It's on everybody's lips. Last year when ChatGPT was released, and I got a chance to play with it and really wrap my head around it even more. And I'd been following AI for many years, so this really wasn't that big of a shock to me that they finally came out with this. But I looked at AI. I'm not a gloom and doom scenario type of person. I think AI has tremendous benefit, especially for customer success. So how can technologies and tools like AI aid customer success professionals in implementing this consultative approach? And are there any particular tools that you all find indispensable? And feel free, like I've said in the prep calls, we're like Switzerland, we embrace it all. But if you have particular tools that help you, please feel free to shout those out as well.
Yeah, I'll start this one.
Sure.
You mentioned the keyword, which is I was going to talk about AI, as I think it is indispensable. And if you're not yet using it, it's going to be. And I think just because of its sheer power to summarize and give data insights, right? Data is democratized, like Wade mentioned, and there's so much data to have about a customer industry. I think that, or I'm hoping that the CS world will leverage it as a secret weapon. It's really invaluable for summarizing, customer signals and intent. And even if you're not sure what it is, like the AI models are learning just as we are learning, but the ability to deliver insights and drive efficiency and do actual predictive churn, predictive churn models is huge. Not to mention, like, you can see how your customers are using it. All the things that we don't have time for. I love data. I've always been super into digging into the data wherever I've worked. And it's like there's not enough time, or if I could just slice and dice the data this way. And that's what I feel that AI is bringing to us. And so my personal favorite AI tools currently are Gong, Meeting Assist inside Gainsight, and just Bard or ChatGPT. Just chat with a large language model. They're all different. They're all trained on different data sets, and they're learning as they go. And hopefully your org has a private access to a private AI where you can type in your questions or extrapolate data insights about your business. Be careful not pasting customers' business information into like Bard, but yeah, I think that and someone in the chat said Gong, like Copilot, the ways that it's taking every meeting you ever had with a customer and summarizing it into like, here's what the customers talked about. That's so powerful. I've listened to hours of Gong calls, which I can now get in 15 seconds in reading a summary.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And I would even add more specific examples of if you're not sure of your customer's industry, why not look it up? Why not in ChatGPT ask a couple questions? You can become an expert pretty quickly without going to tons of webinars and reading lots of newsletters. What's the latest and greatest on the industry? Maybe the latest news articles. That helps you get up to date really quickly. And then when working with the customer, also a huge proponent of, whether you're using Chorus, Gong, Zoom, doesn't matter at this point. But yeah, if you are still out there taking your own meeting notes and your own follow-ups, that is a game changer. And I think something that adds to all of our skill set. And another one that I know does this really well, Update AI, where they're focused specifically on the customer success world and understanding our notes and follow-ups. So they're even more precise than a lot of the others that are focusing on across the realm of different industries.
We use Update .ai and have really good, close relationship with the company ever since they were getting going. So we know Josh and Mickey really well. Really like the that product for sure. So it does do a great job of summarizing things. But back to what you said, Celia, and I'm thinking, Wade, about what you said about understanding the particulars of an industry segment, right? If I have no idea what wealth management is, I can open up ChatGPT and say, tell me about wealth management. I could even, now that it's connected to the internet or using one of the ChatGPT plugins, I could say, hey, this is one of my customers. Help me understand their product set. Help me understand what markets they go after. And you can't, I think some of our legal friends have found that sometimes it makes stuff up. So you can't take everything verbatim, but you can get a really good general sense of what somebody's industry is all about and who the major competitors are.
Yeah. We wouldn't be having, it's not a conversation these days unless we talk about AI. So I'm glad we're doing that. AI is cornerstone to everything that Salesforce is doing in terms of our ecosystem these days. So our teams have been using these capabilities pretty extensively. I think like from a digital lens, the ability to service customers one-to-many is going to improve in terms of quality as you think about automating AI into some of those workflows. But through the lens of high touch, like, as Andrew mentioned, it's not going to take your job. It's here to augment and make you better at your job. And so use it thoughtfully. It's great for researching your customers. Like, you mentioned wealth management. So you can learn about wealth management as a industry. You can even learn about like wealth management for Wells Fargo, right? Like this is information that's publicly available that you'll be able to distill good insights off of. Use some of that output to use AI to craft outreach to customers, to build a success plan. Don't copy and paste this stuff verbatim, but it's a real great way to summarize this stuff. Another piece of tech that is huge for me is Slack. I think some of like less glorious work for success managers is like creating shared awareness among a lot of internal stakeholders. I'm personally accountable to the success for 40 of our customers within our high touch business. And it's so indispensable for me to stay connected to the work my teams are doing to be able to sort of understand where we may need to push and pull. And we're releasing some AI capabilities in there that make it even easier to stay on top of things. So big Slack guy.
And you have Matthew McConaughey as your spokesperson. So,
All right.
Yeah. I think I see, what I do watch consistently is football. I love the sport. And I think I see a Salesforce commercial at least once in every broadcast with McConaughey. Awesome. All right. Listen, let's do this. How about we answer some questions? We got about a half dozen questions in there. And once again, if anybody has any other questions they want to add, please go ahead and add them. Sound good? Awesome. All right. So our first question comes from Michael, good to see you again. That's 2 weeks in a row. Michael asks, could each panelist give one example of your most important open-ended question? And it looks like, Wade, you wanted to jump in right out of the gate. So
Yeah,
you're up first.
yeah. I think no, I can't. And I say that for a reason, because each conversation is going to be unique and require you to do a little bit of research to develop a line of questioning that makes sense for that person. And I think when you start to think about what is that one example, you get into the world of what keeps you up at night, that line of questioning, which is, in my opinion, not super useful. Instead, I would say, as you approach that conversation, do your best to be prepared, and ask questions, but then take the answers and kind of continue to probe deeper. Use that 5 whys methodology to really kind of get to the root of the answer and sort of what it is that your customer is trying to achieve.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
I can
fair.
add on.
I don't necessarily agree with you, but that's fair. Let's see what Celia, what have you got to say?
Yeah, I can add on. Yeah, it absolutely depends on the situation, right? And the complexity and the stage and the customer's business. One of my favorite cheats is to listen to what the customer's saying and then say, tell me more about. So tell me more about how that impacts your business. Tell me more about why that's a priority. Tell me more about what that will do for you. Or, you start to ask more. And so I believe in the taking it layers deeper and deeper, the tell me more approach. And that allows them to open up and share more and more. And from there, you can build off and, from there easily ask if they hone in on one point, can you elaborate that on more, but, how would you describe that more? Things that would not allow them to answer yes or no, but make them almost forced to provide more than the yes, no. The worst case scenario they may say is, I don't have any more. There's nothing else to provide. But at least you've tried versus the pure no, yes, no.
Yeah, you stay away from the closed-ended questions for sure. Amy, what have you got?
I like to call that approach the therapist approach. Well, tell me more about that. I love that, Celia. For me, it works best if they've been a customer for a minute, but I love to ask people, if competitor X called you today, would you take a call with them? You can learn so much about somebody's mindset by asking them if they would entertain moving to a competitor. It's a really low pressure way. It feels like a difficult question. I'm a fan of difficult questions. But people will volunteer so much information. They will tell you, I would, because the product does this, or we're looking at budget cuts. We have transformational change going on. You'd be shocked at the ways that people will go on and give you quite a bit of information if you ask them, would you entertain a call with our competitor?
Although, once again, back to what I was saying before, when I referenced never split the difference, a big kind of variable there is having the relationship that you need to have in order for that person to feel comfortable with giving you that information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I do have one question that is my most important open-ended question. So I do disagree with you on that, Wade. And it's you got to remember the people that I'm speaking to. Okay, I'm typically when I'm doing some sort of especially sales or just after just after the sale type of conversations, discovery with the key stakeholder. The one question that I ask consistently over and over and over again is, how are you measured? Right? Because at the end of the day, people are doing this, they're doing what they do, they earn a living. Right? I want to understand how you're measured. And then that's going to help me do everything that the rest of you also said to kind of take the conversation into different directions. Right? But I want to connect the dots right out of the gate. Because that's going to help me understand how I need to approach this relationship with you. How, what are the things that we need to make sure that we are getting done quickly, with the fastest time to value possible, so that we're validating that we can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. And because I'm dealing with, the chief customer officers, the VPs of success, that are high up on the stakeholder food chain, the things that they are measured on are likely tied to overarching corporate objectives. And we want to make a big impact. And so the sooner we understand that, the sooner we understand the connections to those overarching corporate objectives, the better our story is going to be to connect between what we deliver, right? A better trained, better capable people in customer-facing roles to what those corporate objectives are. Make sense?
Yeah. I want to. I still stand by my statement.
As you should.
That is a great one, because what it does is it creates personal connection to professional outcome, and that goes back into how do you build a friend? How do you build a partner for life? So,
awesome.
Agreed.
Michael, thank you once again for joining us again today, and thank you for the question. Wade, if you could hit the done button there on the Q&A window. All right, our next question comes from Randall. Randall asks, how do you overcome poor product explanation in the sales process when a customer is handed off to customer success? Poor product explanation. So that sounds like code for misset expectations, but it looks like, Amy, you want to jump in on this first.
Absolutely. I think that expectations is the right word. I think that setting clear expectations from the moment you meet your customer. I've had customers come to me that I know have misaligned expectations. And so clear communication is the only way you're going to overcome that. And then they will trust you because you told them the truth from the get-go, not, lay out all your product's flaws. But I think that setting clear, healthy boundaries of how you're going to work together and what your product does, talking about, well, that might be a little tricky. Tell me a little bit more about how you plan on using it this way, can help you ease into that conversation of where they might have gotten confused about what your product can do. And then I think there's a lot of work you can do behind the scenes. I think you can collaborate with your product marketing team. I think you can give feedback to your sales and marketing team. And then if nothing else, you can give feedback to the direct seller. Have them join you on a call. That was kind of my secret weapon. If a customer was having a really hard time with what they thought expectation versus reality, I want the seller to join just so that we could talk through. They build really strong relationships generally with sellers. And hopefully you work for an org that has that account management structure that keeps the seller still engaged. And that was really powerful in making sure that we could get the customer, to Wade's point, to their outcome. Because sometimes people have happy years, or they're comparing multiple products and they get the feature with one product mixed up with the feature of your product. And then when it gets down to it, or they weren't the final signer or the final buyer, it doesn't necessarily work for them. So you got to dig in and figure out what is it that they're trying to achieve, because they may be trying to go from A to B when really you can go from Z to Y, and get them what they need.
I think that's a really important distinction, by the way, is that the happy years thing. Just because a customer's expectations are not accurate doesn't necessarily mean there was something in the sales cycle that led them to that. Okay, and resetting expectations with the customer is not a opportunity. We have to be very careful about this. It's not an opportunity for you to throw anybody under the bus. It's not an opportunity for you to point the finger at sales and say, well, they didn't say the right thing. There's a lot of different sources of misset expectations. At the end of the day, in 99% of the time, nobody's doing something maliciously.
100%. I think that's so important to call out. There's no malicious intent. It just happens when we buy. It happens to me. I bought some snow tracks things and I thought they would have this thing, but really that was something else that I was looking at. And then I got it and I was like, oh, it doesn't have this feature. You know what? They work just fine. It does what I need it to do.
Yeah. Wade, Celia, you want to weigh in on this?
I completely agree.
Yeah, I would just kind of, that experience of a customer that has maybe, unreconciled expectations can feel like can feel like a hurdle. But if you can kind of step back and look at it as an opportunity, I think that begins to give you that POV shift a little bit. Instead of going to the customer and explaining to them why A doesn't do B, and you understand what their outcome is, now you can be consultative. Now you can talk about how your capabilities map to their outcome, and they work in ways that are, maybe they didn't think of, right? I think oftentimes customers will ask you a question, you give them the answer, and that's the end of it. You are not strategic if you're doing that. You're tactical. So look at this as an opportunity. Lean in, be curious, use some of the things we've talked about here, and kind of shift that POV in your head if you can.
Extending that, you said why, you used the word that I was just about to jump in with, right? It's an opportunity not for you to explain why A doesn't equal B. It's an opportunity for you to kind of peel things back and understand, why is this important to you? Totally. Why do you feel it should work this way? Help me understand, help me go deeper and understand what you're trying to accomplish, because there's likely a way that we actually can do it. It just might not be something that you're familiar with. And the reason we do it this way is because of X. I've had plenty of situations where we've been able to turn a misset expectation into just a ton of understanding, and then the customer embracing this thing. So awesome. Who was that? That was Randall. Thanks, Randall. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for the question. Our next question comes from Tanner. Tanner asks, how can we position ourselves as trusted advisors, encouraging our customers to share who are not necessarily willing to do that? Celia.
Yeah, I think this is key because it's not natural for most customers to offer up information. It's not natural for them to openly share or to be looking for that type of a deep relationship or guidance. And they may not have even had that with other vendors or partners before. So a lot of what we talked about sets them up and leads them to this. So building the trust initially, showing you've done your prep and research, establishing that relationship, asking those open-ended questions, but also reading the room. If you're truly hitting a wall with everything you're asking, I like to revert back to what's in it for this person you're talking to, what's important to them. And it's likely, how would they get promoted? How would they look good internally? So I like to focus in on them as an individual if I'm hitting more of that wall, or even if not, just to start there and say, well, how are you measured? Or, what would make this a success for you? What would make you happy with this project or this discussion or even this meeting? You can start really small and build on that. We also have to remember some people are going to be more shy than others. They may, not be willing to share as much. And so being patient and giving time over the course of proving the value and proving that you are going to make them look good and you do care about them, they may be more likely to open up with those future open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Read this, Tanner. Read this. Okay, it's about negotiation, but there are so many lessons in here. There's so many skills covered in here that help you get to that trusted advisor. I mean, basically, Chris's strategy, and I am not being paid for this, by the way. I just love his book, and I love how relevant it is for folks in our industry. But it's a guide for helping you figure out how to make a connection with people. And this is a guy who, Chris is a former FBI hostage negotiator, whose job was to make connections with people very quickly in life or death, high pressure situations. And he's written this book that takes those lessons and that approach, which is a lot of what we've already talked about: active listening, asking good questions, empathy, and shows how he can apply the same fundamental skills that he applied in trying to negotiate people out of life and death situations in business. So
I am a huge fan of reading. I do not want to undermine reading in any way. You can say I have bookshelf here. My house has multiple bookshelves. I try to read 52 books a year, but I know not everyone in my family is a reader. And I know that it was true for everyone that I work with. Not everyone's a reader. So if you talking about tools and technology, if you haven't checked out Blinkist and you like to stay up to date, but you don't like to read, Blinkist is like the absolute solution for you. It's 15 to 20-minute summaries of really awesome professional development books. And then they have fun stuff like Frankenstein and Lord of the Flies. But yeah, so if you want to, I know that they have Never Split the Difference on there. So just a quiet plug for Blinkist, who I've loved for like the last 5 years, because it lets me know if I buy so many books, I have to have a budget for books a year. So Blinkist lets me know if I really want to buy the book or not by listening to the summary.
I like Blinkist as well. Also, that's available on Audible. I drove my son up to Vancouver when he moved up there. And on the way back, that's how much of a nerd I am. I actually listened to the Audible version of that book on the way home because I was alone driving for 10 hours. So I thought, oh, this is a good use of my time. Let me brush up on this. So,
Andrew, I want to just add one thing. I think
yes, sir.
The pandemic has kind of, I think, put a lot of us in this remote virtual setting first, right? That's our default motion. I know there's going to be a lot of variance in terms of ability to do so. If you can get your face in the place, you can spend time with your customer. That changes everything. So if you're local and can grab a coffee with someone, do it. There's really no substitute for building human connection quite like breathing the same air and shaking someone's hand. So if that's something that you can do, like I spend a lot of time, I wouldn't say a lot of time, but 2 weeks a month, I'm in a plane spending time with our customers. And you just can't understate that.
Especially for some of these the largest customers we've been talking about this entire webinar. You need to make the effort to see them. At a minimum, though, you show up to a Zoom call, you better have your camera on, even if they don't turn their camera on. Right? They need to see your face, and eventually they're going to turn their camera on. Right? So be there, be present. Awesome, Tanner. Thank you for the question. Like I mentioned, we had some drop off, but like I mentioned, we're going to go until for probably another 10 minutes or so. Thank you, Tanner, for the question. Our next question comes from Danny. Danny asks, can you talk a bit about how you present and develop a success plan with your client? I mean, this is a bit tangential to the topic, but let's do a quick run through. Number one that I always coach folks on is you never show up with a blank success plan.
Totally.
Show up with something filled out.
Yeah, you definitely need to be able to show something that inspires creative thinking. I think, not to harp on doing your research, but, having some idea of what your customers' goals are is really important. And then how do your stakeholders map into those goals? I use the OGSM framework, objectives, goals, strategies, and measures. And it allows you to state very ambitious objectives, smaller goals that are a little bit more achievable, outline strategies that allow you to hit those goals, and then agree on metrics by which you'll measure success. And I've had a lot of success with that framework because it's digestible. It fits in one slide if you do it right. And it becomes a great feed into your quarterly reviews with a customer to help demonstrate that you're progressing on the shared vision.
Yeah, that's essentially the framework that we developed the one-page success plan out of, that we train people on. Right? It's got to be one page. It's got to be easily digestible. It's got to highlight the key things that need to get done in order for the customer to achieve what they're trying to achieve. It's got to have quantifiable outcomes. How do we determine when we've achieved success? And you got to show up with something. You got to show up with as much information as you can get from the sales process. So you're going through and you're validating. My understanding is that these are your objectives. Have those changed? Can we go deeper in this one? Because I'd like to better understand this. How do we, here are some, and when you're asking customers to quantify objectives, that puts a lot of people just kind of looking like a deer in headlights. So you got to help them, explain to them what that means. And this is where looking at other customers in their space becomes incredibly useful, where you can say, hey, we have other customers in your space that looked at, that were able to achieve these types of outcomes with our offering, and quantifying those, right? So don't just show up with some vague success plan, right? Otherwise, you're better off just not showing up. Anything else?
I love the customer examples. I'll often get questions from customers. What are our competitors doing? And being able to demonstrate that you've brought other organizations in that space to success is important. But I always like to counter back, like, why does that matter to you, right? We're going to do something with you that creates differentiation. So I like to push back on that a little bit. But I totally agree with you. You got to be able to demonstrate that this is not your first rodeo.
Yeah. Amy, Celia, anything to add to that? Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for the question. Our next question comes from Ola. Ola asks, what do you think about talking to your customers about non-working issues, family, etc.? Is it possible only if the customer makes the first step, or should the CSM ask if it feels okay for the customer, or should CSM may ask if feels it's okay for the customer? Celia, look like you want to jump in on this. You got something to say.
Yeah. So I actually think that it's important to set the stage by mirroring what you'd want. So I like CSMs to practice their intro that shares, similar to what we did on this call, a mix of professional and personal. That's not just your first intro, but it's also anytime you're getting on a call and, you're saying, how are you? There's typically the weather talk or sports or some of that, but also share something personal, whether it's a new hobby, something's happening in your family. It has to be at a certain level that it's not going to be too polarizing, but something personal enough. And that will typically allow others to have the chance to then reciprocate and mimic that behavior. And so if you're doing that each time and you're bringing that to the table, the customer is more likely to open up, and then you're more likely to be able to build on that relationship. I also believe in taking those notes and checking in on things they've said in the past. So if they've mentioned that, their kid just graduated, or they had this large milestone in their personal life, they're training for a marathon, take those tidbits of information down just as you would take down their measures of success. They're equally as important as almost a personal success plan to check in on those on the next call to help to build and continue that relationship.
I love that. I use that quite successfully in my career. Wade, one of my largest customers at Business Objects was Wells Fargo, and I'll never forget. And these are the same types of people that I'm playing golf with, right? That I see after we've done doing business. And one of the first things I did when I'd walk into the office is I'd look at the office and see what was about. And I've mentioned Charles before on the program. Charles was a EVP, and I went into his office the first time to meet him, and we Wells Fargo was probably 25% of my book of business. They're a sizable account, and I see golf all over the place. He's got those successory golf posters. He's got a little putting green off in the corner, and so we spent the first 45 minutes of the hour that we had together just talking about golf. And 8 years later, I happened to be at Dreamforce, hadn't seen the guy. 10 years later, hadn't seen the guy in like 7, 8 years. And he comes up to me, gives me a great big bear hug. I hadn't done business with a guy in probably 8 years, hadn't seen the guy in 8 years. And that's the type of connection that you'd love to have and you love to establish, especially with some of your largest customers. So
yeah, we are human beings, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's and that's such a huge part of what I see setting really successful success managers apart from the not so successful is their ability to create that connection. One thing I practice is, like, whatever I do when I'm interacting with a stranger, I look them in the eye and ask them, "How are you?" And I show like I'm genuinely interested in the response, and it's could be "I'm fine," but when you create that eye contact, when you show that you actually care, you'd be surprised how people want to reciprocate.
Big.
So yeah, we're humans.
Just remember, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, and don't talk about sex. Okay. So those are key, right? Just don't go there.
I love
Well,
Nick
thank
shared
you.
something in the chat. That's such a great idea, Nick. Thank you for sharing that with everyone.
I'd missed that. Oh, Nick's virtual background. Awesome. Celia, can you hit done on that? I think we got time for one more question. Let's see. I don't know if we have time to answer this one. We'll try. From Emma on LinkedIn. Emma, by the way, my daughter's name is Emma. I love that name. Hi, I work for a company that provides apps and websites for business companies within the UK. I believe I take a consultative approach with my customers and am a trusted advisor, some with directors openly contacting me with their questions and recommending our services to others. However, I struggle to get many of my primary contacts to open up during our regular contact about how their business measures success and what metrics they care about. Any tips for approaching this, or is it okay to suggest how they're doing based on some obvious metrics and see how they react to that insight? Sounds to me like Emma, you haven't discovered their WIFM or what's in it for me.
Yeah, I would say I think hopefully, Emma, through the course of this conversation, you've learned some tips and tricks that will help you to develop relationships with these folks that will allow them to open up a little bit. And I don't see anything wrong with coming there with a point of view on how you believe they should be measuring success. That sets the tone for a conversation. Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? Should we measure something slightly differently? Should we measure something entirely differently? Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with coming with a point of view.
I mean, the key is you want to have a conversation, right? You don't want it to be an interrogation, right? You want the person that you're talking to feel like they can disagree with you, they can open up, they can question what you have to say. Anything to add, Celia?
Yeah, I would just say coming with the strong point of view that's similar to their business. So find another customer like theirs, reference customers like you at this stage who do this, have shared. How does that resonate with you? So giving them a starting point may allow them to open up versus starting from scratch.
Good. Amy, any final words before we wrap up?
No, just wholeheartedly agree. You should come with an opinion. It helps build rapport. It lends your credence as a trusted advisor, and they wouldn't be showing up to, like, your customers are giving you their time. So be respectful of that time. Come with something of value for them, and your opinion has value. You know your software, you have insights that they may not have. You may just be one of many vendors that they work with. And so the ways that you can provide them coaching and information and your opinions, those are going to matter to your customers. I think you're totally within your right. And that will help build rapport and help them learn to trust you. Of course, don't blindly push ahead like you know everything, but confirm with them. Does this look right? Is this what you're trying to measure? This is what I'm getting from this data. How do you feel about that?
Yeah. Validate, question, keep an open mind.
Yep.
Come with a attitude of, I want to learn more. I want to learn more about you and your business. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Well, we've come to the end of our time together today, and I wanted to say how awesome our conversation has been. Thank you all. But hey, what matters most is what all of you think, not what we think. So I kindly ask that you share your feedback on LinkedIn, tagging me, our guests, or Success Coaching. A big thank you to my amazing panelists for generously sharing your ideas, thoughts, insights, best practices, and of course your time both today as well as during our prep calls. Let me leave you with this thought. Exceptional customer success managers understand that they don't have all the answers, but they sure know where to find them. That's why we created CSM Mastermind, to tap into the collective knowledge and experience of our community to support everyone's growth. Remember, sign up and mark your calendars for our next event on February 14th, when we'll talk about developing customer success plans in a lot more detail than we were able to get to today. Until then, make sure to make space for yourself and your mindset every single day. Have a great rest of your week and month, everybody. We'll see you soon.